I'm Ty Pendleton7 at YouTube, and I want to make a video today about earlobe stretching. And this video is going to be for parents or anybody considering doing this. So, first off, I should probably go over the sizing for gauging. If you're gauging your ears, they have a category of sizes that your gauge fits into. And when you first start your gauge, you're going to start with a ring that is typically about this size. This right here is a 12, and when you first get your ear pierced, I mean, anyone who has it pierced can typically tell you that they started out with either a 16 or a 14 size needle. Sometimes an 18, but that's a really, really small needle. So a lot of people don't really have those anymore. It kind of was popular back in the day, but people have kind of grown more accustomed to the bigger size rings. And these rings right here you can get at Walmart. You can get them just about anywhere. You can get them at head shops, Hot Topic. You can get them at any piercing parlor, any tattoo parlor, any jewelry store, places like that. You can typically get them. But the way the sizing chart works is whenever you have a gauge, that's the typical term for it. A gauge is measured by a number. It's measured by a 12, and then from there it goes down. I mean, it goes higher gauge-wise, but the bigger the ring you have in your ear, the smaller the number for it is. So if I have a 12 right now and I was to size this up to a bigger size, I would go to a 10, and then I would go down from there by 2s. So once you start going down the numbers, you're going to get bigger. And what's commonly referred to as the point of no return is the point where your hole in your ear is big enough that it will not heal by itself. You cannot just take out your earring or your gauge and let it shrink back up by itself. And that is typically a 00. And just to show you what a 00 is, which is also the term for a double-aught, a buckshot, or a shotgun shell that you can buy. This is typically about the size of a 00, which is a Sharpie. And I know this because when I was sizing up, I used a Sharpie in order to stretch my ear to the size it needed to be. So right about here in the middle of the Sharpie is where it is. Once you get up here towards the tip of the pin where the cap is, it's bigger than a 00. So that's about how big a 00 is. Once you break that point, you will then require a surgical procedure to have it corrected. And these are not cheap. To have your ears sewn back up after you get to a certain size where you need to have them sewed up for a job, or you just don't want them anymore, or it's becoming kind of it's starting to hinder your everyday activities or something like that, which is not usually the reason people get them sewn back up, is pretty expensive. You can't just do it at a hospital. You can't go into a hospital and tell them you want that fixed. You have to go to a plastic surgeon. And a plastic surgeon is something that you should be very skeptical about. You should definitely research when you're thinking about having this done, because what they do is when they go in, they will split your earlobe in half, they will trim it up, they will cut off as much as they need to bring it back down even and around and actually create a new earlobe out of what you have already. And then after they do that, they'll sew the two ends together and then put a T in it, a little line to seal up the hole so it'll look like a T in your ear. And this costs about $300 an ear, so it's a $600 total, and that's without insurance, or that might be what it costs. But if it even applies at all, I'm not really sure. But I just know that's how much my friend paid. But it's not cheap. It's a very lengthy process to go through, and if you want to avoid that, I would greatly suggest just not even going through the trouble of gauging your ears, or at least not going to the size where it becomes necessary. The first main issue people run into when they're gauging their ears, besides pain, is a job. If you're at a working age where you typically need to have a job, it is extremely difficult to get a job with gauges bigger than a 00, which is kind of ironic considering that's the size that you cannot let it take out and let it heal up. It's the same. So once you get past that size, employers typically have a bit of a prejudice against it. And when I say prejudiced, I'm talking about people who the job that you're applying for is very customer orientated. If you're working at a car dealership or something like that, or in a large corporate company where you are constantly in contact with customers and your image is very much a big deal, this is going to be an issue for you. A couple of places that I've tried to apply that would not hire me were Mazio's, BMW, Chevy, and these are for jobs that, like a porter job, just driving cars around, because you actually do have to drive people to and from their house to pick up their cars or to drop off their cars or whatever they're doing. But you are in constant contact with customers. A temp service, or any kind of job where you're doing, like if you're trying to do taxes for people, if you're working somewhere like that at a tax agency, anything like that, any kind of a representative job for a company where you're having to meet up with potential buyers or something like that, it's obviously going to be an issue, because what people see is you representing the company. So your appearance is a direct influence on what they think about the company you're representing. A job that doesn't really care so much, a couple of jobs that I've had with my gauges were Walmart, anything in the food industry, anything where you're a cook or something like that. I know I said Mazio's, but they're probably one of the only ones that I found that didn't like them so much. Sonic, Come and Go doesn't mind having them. Target's also a good one to go to. They pay really good. Anything really working at night, any night jobs, construction, obviously, I don't think they really care so much because you're working construction. So stuff like that those are jobs you want to shoot for. So definitely when you're thinking about size, either sizing up to a bigger size where it's going to break that barrier, or thinking about starting to gauge your ears, you definitely want to think about that before you do it, because it will put a strain on your ability to do this. So this is a crucial factor. If your child is considering doing this and they're not yet 18, so you still have a say in what they do and what they don't do, definitely sit down and talk with them about it. They're already, 9 times out of 10, if your child says they want to do something, they're already dead set on doing it, and I'm a direct result of that. But with gauges getting a lot more popular, it's eventually going to get to the point where they're more commonly accepted. The longer people do it, and the more people that do it, the more people that will be okay with it. And that is still very, very young. The trend is still very young. Tattoos have been around for hundreds of years. People have been getting tattoos for hundreds of years, and it's just now getting to the point where it's commonly accepted. So ear stretching, I'd give it a long time before it's commonly accepted, every day, just kind of a normal thing. But and who knows? I mean, today's society is a lot more open-minded than it used to be. So it might kind of break out and just become a big thing. And I really hope it does, because I enjoy my gauges. I love them. I mean, they don't really mean anything. I mean, I just like the way they look, and a lot of people have a story behind why they have them and all that. So, but if you talk to your kid about it, ask them what size they're going to, just sit down with them and just kind of, if you wanted to start off the conversation, just sit down and say, so what do you want to do about this gauging thing, if you want to gauge your ears? And typically they're gonna tell you what size they want to go to. They're gonna tell you why they want to do it. They're gonna tell you all this stuff. They're going to have all this information about it. And because, I mean, if you're thinking about doing this, this is something you typically research. Or you want to research it, because first off, it's going to hurt. If something's going to hurt, you're going to want to know as much about it before you do it. So your child's probably going to already have done research on it and asked a lot of people about it. I know I did. So, and if they are going to do it, I mean, you know, if they're young, I mean, if they don't want to go to a size as big as mine, just ask them what size they want to go to. Get on Google Images, type in the size, just type in like a 7/16 ear stretching or whatever size they have or they're wanting to go to, and it'll pull up images of people who have that size, and you can kind of judge on that whether or not you think that would be something that they can go ahead and do or not. I mean, you know, you're the parent. It's your job to do that. It all comes down to what you say. So, but definitely do not just tell them straight up no without at least talking to them about it. Because when I started gauging my ears, the first thing my parents said was no. I mean, they let me pierce them at first, and I had 6 earrings, and then I kept losing little balls and spikes to them and stuff like that, so I just eventually started to stretch my ears out because it was a lot more cost effective. But as soon as I started doing that, my parents hopped on it and said, stop doing that, don't do it. They didn't really give me a reason why. They didn't tell me why I shouldn't and what the pros and cons of it are. They just told me not to do it. So I didn't really think much about it, and I just kept doing it. Because once a kid gets it set in his mind that he wants to do something, his parents are the last person he's going to listen to. Unless you have like the most angelic kid in the world, you know, the nicest, best kid ever, because I know I definitely wasn't. I mean, I love my parents, and they love me, but definitely sit down and talk to them about it, just kind of get a good feeling of what they're going to do with it. So, because if you don't, they're going to do it anyway. I mean, unless you constantly monitor it, because hearing no is worse than telling them why not. Like, if you have a good reason behind why they shouldn't do it, they're really going to cling onto that and they're going to kind of take that as a pretty good answer. No, just telling them no, don't do it, that almost just fuels their need to do it. So, but if you're the parent, it all comes down to you. I hope this video has helped anyone thinking about doing it, or any parents who have kids that are considering doing it. So, everyone have a good day, and I'll see you later.